Good evening and welcome to the Ysleta Independent School District's meeting of the Board of Trustees. Whether you're here to address the board or to celebrate the accomplishments of those being honored here this evening, we're happy that you've taken the time to join us and invite you to take the opportunity to share your questions and comments with the board via the public comment portion of our meeting. Rules for participating in the public comment portion are available at the sign-up table. We would like to remind everyone this is a board meeting, often attended by students, and ask that we all conduct ourselves in a manner that best represents the values and traditions of the Ysleta Independent School District. Please turn off or silence all cell phones, tablets, and other electronic devices, and thank you for your attendance. March 28th special board meeting is called to order at 6:04 p.m. We have a quorum with Mr. Rosales, Mr. Ramirez, Mrs. Woodruff, Ms. Duenas, and myself, Shane Haggerty. Secretary Duenas, will you please lead us in the pledges and a moment of silence?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, one state, under God, and indivisible. Please remain standing for a moment of silence. Thank you. You may be seated.
Secretary Duenas, do we have requests for citizens' input?
Yes, President Haggerty, we have one, Mr. Cardenas, and its subject is agenda item, action item number 1. You want to press your button there for this microphone?
There we go. Good afternoon. My name is Joe Cardenas. I am president of Moreno Cardenas. We're a local consulting engineering company. We've been in business for over 25 years. By way of background, briefly, I've been a practicing engineer in Texas since 1979. I was appointed by Governor Rick Perry to the Texas Board of Professional Engineers, which is the state licensing board for engineering practice in Texas. And I've served in numerous state and local positions as president or chapter executive. But I'm here to ask a few questions. And I understand this is citizens' input. I don't know whether you would be available to respond, or do I ask these questions when the item comes up?
We're not able to respond to your questions. We can certainly hear them, but...
Okay, all right, sounds good. Well, in looking at the backup to the agenda item, it states that, and this is specific to item 6.1, it states that the purchase of the $14.3 million contract, this is to Hellas Construction, shall be through a purchasing co-op, provided no contract shall be executed, no contract to Hellas, I assume, until the district has received all architectural and engineering plans. So the question that this begs is, how was a construction contractor allowed to submit a bid that's up for award tonight without a set of engineering plans and specifications? That's my first question. Second question is, what is the name of the firm that prepared these engineering plans? It's not stated. Who is under contract to prepare these plans? My third question is, YISD came out with an RFQ early this year, in January, in reference to, it was bond RFQ 01, and as part of that, you all selected engineering firms. This is not the RFQ where you selected architectural firms. That was bond RFQ 02. But the purpose of RFQ 01 was to have on-call firms, and one of the disciplines was civil engineering. I guess my question is this firm that's preparing the plans on that on-call list that you selected. And my final question is, on the March 2nd agenda, the Hellas contract was for $14.6 million. Today, it's shown as 14.3. So my question is, what caused that change in the amount? Those are my questions. I would be glad to approach the podium again, if you will, when the item comes up. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other?
No, no more.
Using our electronic voting for the first time, may I have a motion on the approval of the agenda? We have a motion, Mr. Ramirez. Need a second. So if you're in favor, go ahead and click on the up at the top. You just click the green or the red.
Here?
Right. Looks like motion passes 5-0. Cool. Dr. De La Torre, do you have reports for the board?
President Haggerty, members of the board, esteemed guests, we do have 3 presentations this evening. The first presentation is surrounding a topic, a concept that we've discussed as an administrative team, but that we've asked Mr. John Birkelbach, an expert in this area, to share what an energy management performance contract is intended to do and how it functions. So with that, I'd like to introduce Mr. Birkelbach.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Dr. De La Torre. Energy savings contracts are a very interesting concept in the education code, as well as in the government code. The rules dealing with other state agencies are slightly different than what governs school districts. And the primary thing is to identify areas that may create savings in energy and water consumption use. And the legislature has authorized school districts to enter into specific contracts to perform these types of services, provided that the payment is made from the savings derived. So it's a real benefit to the district if you can get one of these, to the extent you have old schools that need a lot of, or could use new equipment and energy consumption savings type situations. So I've put a definition just so you see that it is where the estimated savings are used to pay for the cost. The second page, I'm not going to go through this, it's just a list for your benefit of all the various things that can be used in a project with one or more of your schools or facilities. The installations of buildings, water consumption, new equipment, caulking, those types of, all the way to that simple situation can be used. And if you have any questions regarding those, we can discuss those, but it's just there for your consideration on the breadth and scope of these types of contracts. What are the steps that need to be done? 1, 3, or 4. The steps to be taken. The first thing that needs to be done is a preliminary audit conducted. And by this, you hire a firm that's in this business to go out and do a preliminary audit to review your facilities to determine what types of activities and what types of work could be utilized to obtain savings in your energy and water consumption. From that, you would issue a request for qualifications. the board would authorize that to be done. And you would seek qualifications from contractors who have experience in doing this type of work. And when I say doing this type of work, it means not only in installing particular energy savings equipment or performing the work, but also to be able to evaluate, and this is where the complication really is, evaluate the savings that can be achieved. And that is a very complex engineering concept where the board would really be well taken to make sure we get the highest qualified people around. To my knowledge, no school districts in town have ever done one of these. Ms. Leeper was just telling me the city did one a few years ago, and it's very complicated and it can be difficult. Once you get the request for qualifications, then you would select a performance contractor. And you could use one or more to come in and kind of do plans, but ultimately you would reduce it to one person who would then do a utility assessment report. And this is a very detailed audit of the work that would have to be done, that he would have to describe the company, the engineer, would describe the work that could be done that they believe would achieve the savings that would help justify doing the project. Then you would negotiate through these things. There's a multiple part situation. You would negotiate with that person on how you pay them to do that audit. Some people do it on a contingent basis. Some people would want a fee if you don't ultimately proceed with the contract. The fee that is paid can ultimately go into the total cost of the project, which is to be paid solely from the savings derived from the work. And then the contractor that you do select must submit this detailed report, and he must identify, when I use the word he, forgive me, it's just the contractor, the minimum savings amount that they believe can be obtained, the time for completion, and the cost of the work. He also has to provide a measurement and verification plan. And this is one of the critical items. It is the critical item on how he's going to calculate what savings there really are. And, you have a lot of different assumptions that go into these particular things on what is your operations and maintenance, how many hours a day are you going to have a facility open, what happens if it changes? How do you calculate and quantify the savings based on an increased use and capacity? And they have to go in and do a baseline analysis of the different types of utility costs that are incurred today, take into consideration increases in rates from the different utility companies. All of that goes into these factors. And there are some national standards that are used by the state energy companies, commission, that are used to help define the types of processes and the algorithms and things of that nature that are used to ultimately make that determination. And then he has to do this utility savings report so that once you've hired this person to do the work and they claim their savings, they have to prove it. So they have to come in with a verification to show that you're actually getting the savings and how much, so that you can determine what's going to be paid to the contractor or on the financing arrangement that's done. And then he has to also prepare and submit the contract. And of course, those have the myriad of all the terms that have to be negotiated in a very complex negotiation. And then after all that's done, you have to go hire a third-party reviewer. And this third-party reviewer, once again, has to be someone that's well-trained, has experience in these types of agreements, in this type of engineering, and they do an evaluation. And their evaluation is the contractor that you selected, the methodologies they used, are they for real? Or is the guy just blowing smoke, if you will? So they come in, and that's another person you would hire, and you would have them review that. And if they can't review it, and if they can't justify it, then you'd probably make the decision you wouldn't go forward if the savings aren't there to justify the cost. But those are all different decisions all the way along. And it's not until after you've gone through all of that, you've ultimately determined your project scope, you've ultimately determined your savings, that you finally sign the contract to proceed with the work. And then there's the types of financing that can be used on these particular projects. A lease purchase contract, which is just basically issuing new bonds. You can use proceeds of bonds, and I believe it would be applicable to the bonds for quality the projects that we're doing now. Or the contractor can guarantee. They can finance it and use the savings. I don't know how many contractors have that capability, but it'd be the best thing for the district if that's the person. If they do finance it, it's your contractor. It's easiest to do. There's also a program with the state called Lone Star, and it's the state conservation group. They loan money. They try to have $400 or $500 million out every year for these types of projects, but I think they have a $5 million cap, and I'm not certain what's contemplated as far as size of this particular program as you move forward. But that's just another item for consideration. And then there's payment performance. There's two types of security for the work that's being done. I think that's the first question. How do we guarantee that this person can pay the savings, or that savings are enough to pay the bill? And one, you have a payment performance bond, which is required by the government code just for the work itself. And then you have a guarantee. So if the contractor says, I guarantee X dollars of savings, then you'll have a bond of some sort from a financial institution, insurance company, or third party, that if they don't make those payments, then you can call upon the bond for payment of the indebtedness. That's a 5-minute, simple statements of what the basic program is. And as I said, it's very, very complicated as you get into the details.
Are there any questions? I'm going to ask that you try the speaker button.
Yes, I have a question. Would this be water utility or water district?
No, it's a private contractor that would bid on doing the work. It's not the utility companies. It's a private contractor that would come in and try to identify those areas in the schools or your other facilities where you could make savings both on electric, gas, water, all your utilities.
Oh, okay, okay. The reason why I was asking, because I saw the agenda, but we didn't have any back information on that. That's why we didn't, that's why I'm asking, because I didn't know if it was with water district or with the water utility.
No, these are private contractors that you would be seeking input. Now, some of the utility companies have, over the years, programs that they've been involved in where certain of those have been done. But this particular program under the education code is really for private contractors.
Now, would this be so that they can help us save?
So they can what, excuse me?
Help us save?
Help you save, yes.
Okay.
They would help
and
you.
it would have to be a license, right? License. Who would you recommend on issues like this as for instance, what kind of engineering?
It has to be someone who has experience in water analysis, utility analysis, savings, implementation of these programs. As I said, I'm not familiar with anyone locally that does that. There may be a number of people. I just don't know.
Okay.
But that's the most important thing is, one, to make sure you have a very qualified person who's had experience. And all of those things would be laid out in your request for qualifications, which would be reviewed to determine the experience.
I'm sorry, just for the record, and you did say it, I did read on the green presentation you just had, it had to be somebody that has at least 5 years of experience, right?
I believe the statute says 3 years.
Oh, 3?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, I thought I read
Which
5.
isn't very much, in my opinion, for something of this nature, but.
Okay, all right. Well, it's good, I'm sorry, it's good information to know what we're going to be looking at or what to look for.
It provides a good option, especially for your older schools.
Yes, sir.
Course. Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
And, I'm a big proponent of savings as far as energy, water, and all this and that. Where are we as a district now? Are we now actively engaged in looking at viable companies, engineering firms? Can you bring us up to par on that?
Yes, sir.
please?
We have been preparing the RFQ, the solicitation, for some time that describes the scope of work that Mr. Birkelbach just reviewed with you. And again, the idea is that this revenue, these monies are being paid now, and that's likely going to increase by about $800,000 next year when the rate increase is implemented. And so we need to become a little less cavalier with our utilities and begin to look at options like this as a way to mitigate the imminent increase in our utility bill. As I understand it, this first increase will be followed by a second increase within a year, 18 months after that. What this basically does is it takes money that you're already paying to utilities, and that money should be able to handle the note after you've installed new controls, perhaps envelope windows, doors, roof, when you move from evaporative cooling to a controlled HVAC system, water usage. As a matter of fact, the artificial surface on the football fields will almost immediately have a favorable impact in that area. And what we've outlined in the solicitation is that we're only interested in working with a company that guarantees that if we're unable to secure those savings, or if the savings are inadequate to pay our monthly utility bill, that company assumes the responsibility for making up the difference. And that's what I think Mr. Birkelbach was speaking to, that it's a very complex, comprehensive process where at every step of the way, we have to agree as to what constitutes savings and how those savings will be measured, and ultimately whether or not they will generate the kind of revenue we need to pay for our utilities without paying more than we're currently paying today.
Actually, the savings would be used to repay the capital costs of
The equipment.
implementing all of the different projects.
Well, I certainly would like to take a real good look at that because it's eminent. It's the electric company and then the water company and every company that there is to get
Gas.
money from.
Absolutely.
We need to be ahead of the curve on that one.
We'll come back with a little more detail, but with your
I appreciate
permission, we'd just simply like to put the solicitation out there and see who we attract, and then allow them to compete for our business by being very strategic and very detailed relative to what they're offering the school district.
Thank you.
Mr. Ramirez?
Dr. LaTorre, just a couple of questions on the, how many, you mentioned before, how many companies are out there across the country that do this sort of thing?
There may be half a dozen that are going to be serious players. Optera, Chevron used to have a program. ABM has a program. TASB has a program. Now, TASB's program will not guarantee making up any delta if you don't meet your savings. And so we'd rather have someone that's willing to put money behind it and guarantee that if your savings fall short of what you need to pay the note off for all of the equipment and all of the systems and controls, then they assume that responsibility. But the reality is that a lot of these companies are not domestic, they're international. So we do have an interest in working with a domestic company that has headquarters in the United States and not in England or in other parts of Europe. For obvious reasons. We serve as home to one of the largest military installations in the country, and I think it's important that we remain loyal to our country when deciding, but there will be a handful of them.
And the timeline for this?
I believe we're going to advertise, where's Ms. Gerlach? When will the advertisement, so this week? And we expect to bring something back to the board in April, or is it in May? May board meeting will bring back the first preliminary list of people that have submitted proposals.
Any further questions? Thank you, sir. Ready for the Young Women's Leadership Academy.
Yeah, we thought that it's been some time since Ms. Villalobos and her team initiated work around this Young Women's Leadership Academy, a 612 college preparatory school for young ladies. And so we thought we'd give you an update on how things have gone. Ms. Villalobos? And Dr. Kennedy will join her. Because you know Ms. Villalobos tends to be a little timid.
Good evening. Good evening, President Haggerty, members of the board, and Dr. De La Torre. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to share with you an update on the Young Women's Leadership Academy. If you recall, back in July of 2015, the board entered into an agreement with the Young Women's Leadership Network to open up the single-gender college preparatory 612 public school that focuses on college readiness, leadership, and health and wellness for the fall of 2016. 2015-16 has been considered our planning year, and one of the biggest decisions that we had to make was the selection of the principal of the new school, and I'm sure that you will agree that we made an excellent choice. But before I turn the presentation over to Mrs. Villalobos, I do want to share with you that over the course of the parent information nights that we met hundreds of parents who were absolutely grateful and very appreciative for this endeavor. And what we stressed to them was that we could not have, or this opportunity would not have been made possible without the leadership of Dr. De La Torre and the complete support from each and every one of you. So we would like to thank you very, very much. So without further ado, Ms. Melinda Villalobos will now present the update.
Good evening, President Haggerty, members of the board, and Dr. De La Torre. This evening, we have some talking points to share with you, and the first thing I'd like to talk with you a little bit about is just walk you through a conversation around our student recruitment. On November the 10th, we had media coverage unveiling the Young Women's Leadership Academy through a press conference held here at Central Office, also announcing the parent evenings that we would be having here at our Central Office for students across the entire city. With that being said, we also had a presentation to the Ysleta principals so that they were very well aware of what the Young Women's Preparatory and Young Women's Leadership Academy is all about and how the recruitment process would take place so they could understand if they were approached or had questions from parents or students at their schools, they could certainly answer those questions. In addition to that, we served 3 days at the Junior League Christmas Fair as a vendor and met parents and people across this entire city, which was really, really exciting because you got to see people outside of Ysleta, faces that we don't get to see a lot of, and so we were able to use that as a marketing and recruitment venue. In addition to that, we tapped into our counselors. We believe that they are a valuable source at our schools and that we recognize parents and students will go to principals and will go to counselors if they have questions about programs or special things that they are applying for. So with that being said, we mailed out to all current 5th and 6th grade girls in our district over 2,440 mailers advertising and recruiting and asking parents to come to the parent session. In addition to that, our Public Relations Department issued a Freedom of Information Act request for surrounding districts through the entire El Paso County. And with that being said, we mailed out 7,529 mailers to current 5th and 6th grade girls across our city, making that a total of 9,974 mailers that we mailed out asking girls to come and learn more about us. We also participated in a phone call through that Freedom of Information Act. Over 8,000 phone calls went out to families across the city as well. And believe it or not, if it wasn't the mailer, it was the phone call, and they were very, very excited to receive this kind of information. Some had to think twice because they thought it was too good to be true, and the minute they called our office and we were able to really validate this is a legitimate school, this has a real purpose, we're accredited, they were signing up to be at our parent information evenings. We had 7 parent information meetings that were held here at Central Office, whether they be evening or daytime meetings to accommodate parents. We distributed 510 applications. Of that, 383 applicants and applications were completed, turned in, and vetted. So all of these were reviewed. Of the 383 applications, 312 parent, child, student, daughter, interviews were held face-to-face here. So for about a month, we had a lot of traffic coming through central office. It was beautiful, and it was music to our ears to hear students back in our surroundings. With that being said, after every interview was held, it was actually Super Tuesday at 4:12 in the afternoon, our 312th interview concluded. 248 acceptance letters were mailed out to girls across the entire city, and to date, 240 students have accepted their position at the Young Women's Leadership Academy. We will hold registration here at Central Office beginning this Saturday, April the 2nd, and the subsequent Saturdays, 9th, 16th, and 23rd. We will have approximately 70 to 80 parents each parent session, where we will go through the entire registration process like you would typically do at a school, but we will do that here at Central Office, and they have all their materials that have already been mailed to them, ready to go. They will do registration, course selection, and they will also do sizing for their uniforms and start ordering their school uniforms for our school. The breakdown of girls entering into our academy, 143 girls are coming from Ysleta, and the beautiful noise and music to our ears is that 97 additional girls out of district will be coming into our district. You have a breakdown in front of you, 43 from the El Paso Independent School District, 42 from Socorro, 7 from Clint, 3 from private schools, 1 from Canutillo, and 1 from homeschool. With the 97 girls that are being accepted outside of the district, many parents showed an interest in bringing their younger siblings over to our district as well. And so many, through the interview process, had questions about, how do I get my younger son or younger daughters into your school district? And so we helped walk them through. So we're expecting some of our girls to bring their other siblings over to our district too. So we'll be anxiously awaiting that information. In addition to that, in January 4th and 5th, we did the bulk of our teacher interviewing, and to date, we have hired 18 teachers. 3 teachers are still in the interview process, just about to be offered positions. 12 of those 18 are from Ysleta, 1 from Socorro, 1 from Clint, 1 from El Paso, 1 from a private school, and we have 2 brand-new teachers coming out of the field with strong backgrounds in their field, whether that be math or science. Program overview, as Dr. Kennedy stated, the core values of our program center around college and career readiness, health and wellness, and leadership. And so some of the pieces of information and curriculum to support that will be a school-wide AVID program to support the college and career readiness at our campus, a springboard curriculum, which is part of the College Board. So I want you to think about students who are taking the AP exams, SAT exams. All of this is supported by College Board, and we believe early on that starting in 6th grade all the way through 12th grade, our girls will be getting a rigorous curriculum, exposure to the pace and the coursework that they need to be getting ready for to be very successful on these types of exams. Health and wellness will center a lot around social-emotional learning with mindful schools and just some extracurricular clubs that many of our teachers have expressed interest in: dance, yoga, rugby, coding club, culinary, gardening, technology club, and triathlon club. Our leadership component will be centered around community service projects, etiquette, and of course, character education. And our next steps, we will be meeting with our faculty just to do a meet and greet and tie up some loose ends. They've never seen each other, and so this is not an official meeting per se, but a meeting for us to get together and really vet some things through before we meet for registration. Our teachers will also participate in what I consider a pretty rigorous professional development plan and program through the months of June, July, and August, gearing up for our students. We will have summer camp for our girls August 1st through the 5th. And we'll also be meeting with families and their young ladies through the course of the summer. And of course, school begins on August the 22nd. We are very, very excited about receiving our young ladies, and just the excitement from the parents and the girls of what they've been able to share through their stories has just been very rewarding. We cannot thank you enough for your support, your belief in the program. And Dr. De La Torre, thank you so much for just exposing us to this, because we're already changing our city.
Thank you. Yes, Ms. Woodruff?
Yes, I was wondering, so you have 240 acceptance letters.
Yes, ma'am.
Is there going to be any kind of a waiting list in case some of these girls change their mind, or how does that work?
Yes, ma'am. In fifth grade, we have girls on a waiting list. There were 19 girls that received wait list letters. Fifth grade, I will tell you, is packed. In the event we have any room, we will go immediately to the wait list, which parents also had to RSVP to and let us know, yes, keep us on the wait list, and we'll go right in that order for the wait list. In the sixth grade, we could take about 10 more girls in the sixth grade. We've actually had a parent call in from Clint that came over, picked up an application, is very interested. And so as that is happening, and we expect that to happen even maybe through the summer, sixth grade, we can still accept about 10 girls.
Will there be a cutoff when you won't be accepting these girls?
The count cutoff will be 250, and I would venture to say if we're not enrolled by that first week of that summer camp for the girls, we need to cut that off right before camp, because that will be a requirement and very, very important for the girls to go through.
Thank you.
Ms. Dueñas?
Yes. With the waiting list, about how many waiting list students do you have right now?
We have 19 of the 9 confirmed back that they wanted to stay on the waiting list.
Oh, they do?
Yes.
Okay. And there's not a chance of them getting in on the program? Or
Not in fifth grade.
What's the limit?
Right now, we have 141 girls in the fifth grade. We were hoping to have 125. We well exceeded that, but we have plans to accommodate what that will look like with our staff. And so we are right at the max in that fifth grade group. There will be sixth graders next year.
And for the following year, is it the same limit on students?
Same limit, yes, ma'am.
Okay, and like if some of them drop, can you bring those students in that are on the waiting list?
We could bring them in. That we'll need to determine that depending on the course of where we're at during this process. So during the first year, let's say it's before Christmas time, more than likely we could accept them in. With the understanding and through a good conversation with parents and students, what that's going to take as a family component to support what the young lady's going to need to be able to do just to catch up, if you will.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions? Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Here on the presentation on the sale of Robert F. Kennedy Pre-K Center.
Yes, I'd like to introduce Lindley Leeper, our Chief Financial Officer. She's going to give you a thumbnail sketch of what it will look like and what you can expect in the future before we actually accept an offer from anybody.
Good evening, Mr. President, members of the board, and Dr. De La Torre. I'm going to review with you a very brief presentation this evening regarding the sale of the property known as the Robert F. Kennedy Pre-K Center located at 9009 Alameda. Briefly, we're going to talk about the authority by which you may sell real property, and then talk a little bit about the process, and then look at the timeline. So, under the Texas Education Code, Section 11.154, first, the Board of Trustees must determine that this property is no longer necessary for the operation of the district. Then, by resolution, the board may authorize the sale of any property within the district that's held in trust for public purposes. Once we have determined who the purchaser is, then the president of the board would execute a warranty deed conveying the property. And then lastly, if you determine that it's necessary or if you desire, we may engage the services of a real estate broker or other salesperson for assistance in the completion of the sale. We have already obtained a preliminary appraisal, and with your approval this evening, we would move forward to obtain a review appraisal, giving us more comfort that the initial appraisal is within the fair market value. This description here is the actual legal description of the property located at 9009 Alameda. And then finally, with your approval this evening, we could move forward to advertise the solicitation, and it's actually the bottom line on March 31st. If we have your approval this evening and we do advertise on that date, we would bring it back for your action on May 11th. If we wait until April 28th to advertise the first solicitation, then it would be board action on June 15th. With that, I can take any questions.
Any questions? Ramirez first.
Thank you, sir. Just as the representative of that, of the Ysleta feeder pattern, one of the things that the community's expressed a concern about what will happen going forward in the future. As I live on that block behind the school, I also serve, it's also my personal interest too, that the community not change that much, but obviously the district wouldn't have any control over that. The other concern I would like to express is that, and Dr. De La Torre has, and he may say so public as well, that I've asked that the district put together a presentation for the community so that they can come and ask the hard questions, they can be informed of what's going on and that sort of thing. And again, I think that's important to keep the community informed, let them know what's going to happen. And many of those are my neighbors, have been past neighbors, and again, they express concern about how it'll change the landscape. The school has been a good neighbor from the entire time that it's been there. And so I think that's important that we say that tonight and just let the Ysleta community know that we are interested and we are cautious and we are wary, but that we will keep their interest in mind going forward.
And if I may, and I apologize, I neglected to mention that part of the process for selling the property is that we will use a competitive sealed bid process. Much like when we go out to bid to procure goods and services, we will go out to bid to sell the property. And so it will be independent. We are representing the taxpayers. We want the most value for their money. And so while those things are very sensitive and we will definitely be here to address all of the questions, it will go through the same process as a solicitation for goods and services.
Ms. Duenas?
Okay. I think Mr. Sotero beat me to one of them. My question was about the constituents that live in the area. And if they're okay with it, and if we have had any meetings there for them before we do anything. And just for the record, we'd like to keep them informed of what's really going on and not come back later on that we didn't have anything. At least we have a record of meetings that we've had with them on that. The other one is, what is the market value? What is the fair market value? And also an appraisal and a subsequent review appraisal. Was it done or has it been done?
We have obtained a preliminary appraisal, and if you want to deliberate regarding the value obtained from that appraisal, then I would recommend that we move into executive session to do so, as discussing it here may be detrimental to the competitive process. Mm-hmm. If we obtain your approval this evening, then we will move forward to obtain a review appraisal. So we will have another independent party review the property and the first appraisal that we've already obtained to make sure that we have a fair market value that we're comfortable with.
Yeah, because I was just wondering, now my other question is about how many buyers do we have, or do we have any yet? And what really, I'm just curious on if it's going to stay as it is, or are we going to demolish to sell the property?
So the first step is that we must obtain your approval and your determination that this property is no longer necessary for operation of the district. Once you as a board determine that, then you will by resolution authorize us to go out to bid or go out with a competitive sealed process to obtain bids to purchase it. And so we haven't done any of that yet. We're here before you this evening asking for your approval by resolution to move forward with this process.
Okay, well, like I had said, due to the appraisal, and we would have to go to executive session.
Yes, ma'am, if we're going to.
Approximately how much, well, I guess we can't say that either, huh? I see the attorney also saying, laughing. But how can we go into and go into a vote without knowing all those
Your vote this evening would determine that the property is no longer necessary for operation of the district and that you have reached a consensus that you're willing to move forward with a solicitation to sell it. Then, once that process has been complete, we would bring it back to you for board action. You would still have to approve the actual contract for sale. Tonight, you're just approving that we can move forward to solicitate a sale.
But what about the question? That's what I'm trying to figure out, because how am I going to find out about the appraisal, and how am I going to find out the questions I'm asking you right now without, and then going into a vote without, like, for instance, the amount and...
Mr. Haggerty, I think our time limit is passed. Thank you.
But it's something that we need to know. Otherwise, I'm sorry, you don't have my vote. Okay.
I want to ask Dr. Del Torre this question. Because I'm interested in making sure that we don't have some organization that would be detrimental to our schools take over that property. Will that be included in the RFQ?
You probably can't do that. I think what you can ultimately do is, if you feel uncomfortable relative to who's submitted a strong proposal, you can simply direct the administration not to sell the property.
Okay.
But how are we going to find out? How are we going to find that out?
Oh, by then we will have had a number of meetings, and so you'll know very soon here. I thought I sent out a BC that gave you the initial appraisal. You'll get a second one, and it will either support that or deviate from that. And then at that point, we would solicit for a CSP. When we get the CSP information, that's something that's probably appropriate to discuss in executive session. At that point, you'd also be aware of who has submitted offers. And then when administration feels like you've been provided all the information, should the board still be interested in selling the property, then we'd put it on the board agenda as an action item. But by that point, you will have received every bit of information that you've requested, and we would have we would have had a meeting at Ysleta High School and invite parents and others to attend and to hear a presentation, and to the extent that we can, we would answer questions.
And also I think to answer your question, Ms. Duenas, on the presentation we just got, page 5, it shows a list of dates that we would have the sealed competitive bid due by, so that by then you would know who's interested in the property. The evaluation meeting that we would have, and it would be put on the board book before our board date for action.
Where was that?
Page 5 of the presentation, the RFK property sale presentation.
Mr. President?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, sir.
I don't want to belabor the point where we're just preliminary looking at the possibility of taking this action. So there's no need to go into the particulars, because there's no particulars at this point. My only question for Dr. De La Torre is it absolutely, that we made the decision, we are never going to need this piece of land? I wouldn't want to go back 5 years from now, 10 years from now, oh, now we have to go buy some land.
From an administrative
As we
position,
sit here today, yes, sir.
we certainly will not rely on that facility in the future, given the 2 decades of declining enrollment and the fact that at one time this district accommodated over 50,000 students, and today that number is closer to 42,000 students.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Leeper.
I still have a question, I think. On the, my question was that, just for the record, for our vote right now, because if you're going to have meetings later on, by voting now, by voting for this right now, will mean that we're in agreement to do, but we don't know I haven't gotten my answers, my questions answered yet, because of the meetings and stuff. What if they don't want to go because we already voted for it? But just for the record, I want to clarify this, that it's not that we're voting for it to, or is it, that we're voting for it to be sold?
You are voting this evening that the property is no longer needed for the operation of the district and that we have your permission to move forward with solicitation of bids to buy it. But you will have another opportunity to actually confirm the sale. And we can't move forward beyond what we're doing this evening without your approval and action.
Thank you. I just wanted it for the record.
Thank you. We'll now address the consent agenda, and just for practice, if you guys don't mind, there's only 2 items. If we can vote on both individually. Consent item number 1, consider and take possible action to approve YISD cooperative requisition 28653 with Fred J. Miller for the purchase of band uniforms in the amount of $137,810 through purchasing cooperative from various district funds. Is there any discussion? There is no discussion. Using your electronic voting, may I please have a motion on consent item number 1?
It went through.
It is approved, 5-0. Consent item number 2, consider and take possible action to approve action budget amendments. Is there any discussion? Yes, Ms. Woodruff.
Yes, I just have a question about the one for the Young Women's Leadership Academy and Bel Air Middle School. They're lumped together, but it doesn't say how much is going to one and how much is going to the other. At least I didn't see that. Did I see something wrong, or?
I do have those amounts. Let me see if I can find it in your backup. I believe it's about $51,000 is for the middle school uniforms, and then the remainder is for the Young Women's Leadership Academy. And just as a side...
So, did you say for the Bel Air Middle School, it's for what? For athletic uniforms or for?
Yes, ma'am. As a result of the consolidation of Ranchland and Hillcrest, Bel Air Middle School will require new uniforms. And I believe it's $51,000 is for the uniforms.
And the rest goes to the young ladies?
Young Women's
Okay.
Leadership Academy.
Thank you.
Is there any more discussion? No more discussion. Using electronic voting, may I please have a motion on action item number 2? All those in favor?
Oh, we vote now? Did it go through?
Oops. What did you vote?
Huh?
Oh, motion passes 5-0. Yeah, I hit the button before. If the record can reflect that Ms. Nguyen just voted in approval?
Yes, I voted yes, but I guess I
Action.
didn't press hard enough, or...
I saw you press it, so I hit it, and it didn't. Action item number 1, consider and take possible action to approve YISD cooperative requisition with Hellas Construction Incorporated for the purchase of athletic equipment enhancements for the amount not to exceed $14,300,000 through a purchasing cooperative from bond funds, contingent upon final negotiation and legal counsel review, and provided further that no contract shall be executed by the district until the district has received all architectural and engineering plans required under chapters 1001 and 1051 of the Occupational Code for performance of the work, and a written certification from the program manager to the district that all required plans and specifications have been prepared and that the required plans and specifications are a part of the contract to be executed. Is there discussion?
Yes.
The button real quick. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. This is action number 1. Okay. I'm a little confused on the amount. In August of 2015, it was a 12 point million, and then something. Then on January, it was an 18.8. Now it's at 14 something. How did these figures change, or?
Good evening, Mr. Haggerty, Dr. Delatorre, members of the board. This evening with us is Mr. Sloan Harris, who is the principal of the LK, our program manager, and he'll be here to answer any questions you might have.
To answer your question, I'm not sure where the $12 million figure is coming from. The difference between the $14 million figure and the $18 million figure would be the difference between the construction cost that was budgeted for this project versus the overall project costs that was budgeted for this project, which takes into account all the soft costs required for the project.
I have another question on this. I have several, but just to make sure, just for the record, just to make sure. How safe are these tarps? I've had some comments from other people. Now, do we have or will we have training for our maintenance people or coaches or whoever is going to be taking care of our turfs? I've heard that once the soil is hardened, it's like your head hitting concrete. And in order to moisturize this turfs, you have to water them. What do you really have to maintain with? Or can you explain that?
Sure. Yes, there will be training that's done with your staff for proper operation and maintenance of the fields over the life of the fields. The methodology in which that takes place is primarily done with for lack of a better term, a brush that's pulled behind either a mower or a four-wheeler or a John Deere, and that keeps the infill and the fibers of the turf upright. Also, the contractor is required as part of their maintenance agreement and their warranty requirements to come back every year and test the G-max of the fields. The G-max is what gauges its overall cushion, and there are requirements of the G-max that has to be maintained. Should that number not meet the requirements, there's a number of things that the contractor can or will have to do to mitigate that. It could possibly be just additional brushing of the field. It could mean adding more infill to the field itself, which provides that cushion. If you do not maintain the field, dependent on the infill, and there's several different types of infill materials that are used in different turf systems, it can become compact. The infill that's specified for this particular field is one of the more resilient infill materials that over time does not compact as much as some of the other materials that can be used, but it does still need to be maintained.
Okay. So
It's It's Ms. Withers.
Excuse me. I'm sorry.
I'm just thinking that every field that you're going to be doing is going to be different because we're all located in different areas. So there's these people that we're asking for. They will take that into consideration, and they'll be. I'm thinking about the amount of money that's going to have to be spent for each one. Did they have the chance to look and see the differences between them and all of that?
Well, some of the major physical differences between Field A to Field B would be your soil stabilization, and what has been provided in the bid documents that we received from Hellas Construction includes an allowance for absolute worst case scenario at any of the fields. There's been a geotech report provided by a third-party engineer, which is Terracon Consultants, that's been delivered to Hellas, that provides all the soil stabilization requirements at each location. And we feel, and Hellas feels, that the allowances they provided for that are more than adequate. And there's certainly a possibility that there will be unused allowance that is returned to the district. Other differences will definitely be graphical. Obviously, the school colors and the school logos will be utilized in the infield as far as the center logo that you would want to have at each school, as well as the end zones and the colors that are used for those. And that will be an approval process that goes through us and district administration, and the development of that artwork will occur with the athletic director, for sure.
Mr. Rosales?
I go back to, you made a comment about $18 million, and it has now been reconfigured to 14.3. And you made a comment that there was, that he had, according to your numbers, there was initially 14.6 billion. Is that correct, sir? Can you give me a scenario as to how we got from 18 to 14.3?
Well, let me address the 14.6 versus the 14.3. The 14.6 was originally in your board agenda previously that was pulled. When we took a second look at that, it was identified that we did not, it should have been 14.3. It's a not to exceed 14.3 million. I already addressed the soil stabilization allowance that's put into that amount for worst case scenario at each field. It also includes the electrical requirements that will be worked through with El Paso Electric at each field for lighting. As you know, we're providing new lighting at the baseball, softball, and tennis courts at each high school, and they provided an allowance for worst case scenario based on their research with El Paso Electric. Barunda and Associates is the electrical engineer that's been hired to provide the electrical design for permitting as required by the city of El Paso. They're about 97% complete with their drawings thus far. There's a few more T's they have to cross and I's they have to dot with the El Paso Electric to make sure they're meeting their design requirements. And then we will be on our way. And of course, per the action item, a contract with Hellas will not actually be executed until those documents are received and delivered to Hellas. In regards to the 18 million, let's just say 18 million, again, that is the total project cost versus the 14.3, which is for construction. The things that are in the total project costs that aren't in construction are things like engineering services, the surveying that was done, the geotech engineering that was done, the electrical engineering that's being done. And when we budgeted this project during bond planning, we provided a soft cost budget that would encapsulate everything that could possibly happen.
The other point, and again, please, if I sound redundant or dumb, I just want to make sure, according to what I see here, though we all see here, there's no contract shall be executed by the district until the district has received all architectural engineering plans required under chapters and on and on and on. Does this, Mr. Cardenas, does this meet one of your particular questions?
The way I understand it is, correct me if I'm wrong, that's an assurance for us saying that we're not going to, the district isn't going to move forward on this until we receive those documents.
That's correct.
But we don't have to call another meeting once we get those documents to be able to go ahead and approve.
That's exactly right. And that language is taken directly from the Texas Government Code. So any architectural or engineering documents that might be required or are required for this project will be obtained before a contract is executed with Hellas, in addition to the certification letter that I will provide, noting that all Texas government and occupational code requirements have been met in order for you to actually enter into a contract with Hellas Construction because of the amount and it being purchased off the Region 19 co-op.
Ms. Duenas, it's your turn.
Yes, I have a couple of questions. Hellas Company is an out-of-town company?
Yes, ma'am.
That does a lot of this work, TARS
Yes,
projects?
Hellas Construction is one of the aforementioned turf construction companies for stadiums in the state of Texas. One of the reasons that we are recommending them for approval is that they are a part of the Region 19 co-op, which means they had to compete and provide bids to actually be accepted to the co-op, and their pricing has to be competitive with industry standards for their type of goods and services they're providing. They have done many projects across the state that are in alignment with the scope of this project, so our reference checking with those districts played another role in why we decided to move forward with them. They all received very excellent references. Other districts of similar size and scale had 6, 7 stadium turf field projects that they executed in one summer.
And so are they licensed to do the design also and do the project, the construction and everything?
I actually don't know if there's a license requirement for
engineering
the
to
service.
design? Or who's going to do the engineering design?
We've obtained Terracon consultants to provide the geotechnical engineering,
Okay.
which provides all the subsoil stabilization requirements for the field. We've retained, or the district has retained, Spencer to provide all the surveying, which they've done, and then Baruna and Associates for the electrical engineering. That is all in conformance with the City of El Paso requirements and in alignment with what the code officials' requirements are for these projects within the City of El Paso.
Okay, so they're the ones that they did submit also then to the,
Those firms that I just mentioned, yes, they've all gone through the RFQ process and been approved by the district.
okay. Well, I guess they submitted, okay. That was my question is how did we get there? But they submitted. I guess I was just going by each question that I'm going through. Now, the reason why I was asking this is due to being, I guess we got to be cautious, but I'm sure you're doing your job and everything about the situation. And now there won't be any violation of for instance, of the, I have a problem with this word, Procurement Act?
Procurement Act? Yes. No, we are in compliance with district policy in regards to purchasing for a co-op, as well as any procurement laws that we're aware of.
Good.
And
Okay, just for the record, just to be safe and everything, just to let some of our people
I understand.
out there know and stuff. It's just for the record that we have gone through it and we've you all have checked everything out and
Mr.
Thank
Ramirez,
you.
you have a question?
I wanted to follow up on a question that Mr. Cardenas mentioned during the citizens' input. Can you tell us a little bit of what you know about Hellas? I mean, are they a one-stop shop where they do all the work with the exception of the soft engineering issues that you talked about earlier?
Yes, they are able to provide the construction services for the turf. It's also the product that they manufacture. So they manufacture the turf product themselves as well as install it. And they also have the experience and the ability and the approval through the co-op to provide the other scopes of the project that are in this project, such as the lighting at the baseball and softball and tennis courts, the backstops at the baseball and softball fields, the outfield fencing. That's all within their purview, as well as their qualified experience. They've got a lot of that under their belt with really good reference checking in other districts.
When we were talking about this before, back last year, I guess, or earlier this year, there's a limited number of companies in this country that's able to provide that sort of service and that large of a scope of project, correct?
Yeah, that is correct, and that is another reason why we immediately evaluated Hellas. There's other companies that, should we go through the same process that we went through with Hellas, we might get to the same point. But the number one priority for us on this project, and it's always a priority, but it doesn't always necessarily come to the top, is time. We, with the understanding of all the hard work that you did, the administration did, your Citizens Bond Planning Committee did in order to get this bond passed in November, and out of respect for the voters that passed the bond, we needed to see something tangible as quickly as possible that affected as many students as possible. And that's what this project does, because you touch every single high school campus, fine arts and athletic sports or programs rather, a lot of students, and it's something that we would, given the ability to purchase off the co-op, could do and accomplish before football season starts next fall.
We purchase a lot of things off of different co-ops. So is it uncommon for a school district to purchase these sort of services at this dollar amount in that scenario?
That's exactly why we didn't make this decision blindly. We evaluated if this has been done in other districts and, again, similar size and scale, and we found that it had. If we would have gone through a traditional design bid build process, which is certainly another viable methodology you could do, we would not be able to accomplish the fields by the beginning of football in the fall because of the time it's associated with that.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I would like to, if at all possible, bring Mr. Cardenas to at least bring some points that we want to consider. This is our first major step, and I want to make sure that we've done all the diligence that we need to do in this type of agreement, because this is new territory for us, for me anyway. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Rosales. Just a couple of points. The gentleman mentioned that the firms, the engineering is being done by 3 local firms. I believe he said Borunda Electrical, Spencer the Surveying. But what he failed to mention is that the majority of this project is civil engineering. He did not identify who that firm is. Now, as far as Hellas, I'm not here to contest Hellas. I am not a contractor. I'm sure they do fine work. They do have a very good reputation for putting these type of specialty turfs in athletic fields around the country, high school stadiums, pro baseball, pro football stadiums. So I'm not here to question that. I'm here simply to say that what you all attempted to do on your March 2nd agenda was to include design with construction with Hellas. That is prohibited by state statutes for buy boards. So now, as the agenda is stated, the gentleman has separated that, and that is correct. You cannot design through a buy board. It's got to be separate. So you're going to certify that. But the question is, how can Hellas submit a bid for construction without a set of plans? Because the plans are not ready. How does Hellas quote this project? How does he do his quantity takeoffs? How much earthwork? How much pipe? The plans aren't finished. And who's that civil engineering firm? Thank you.
I'm sorry. What was that you said, sir, Mr. Cardenas? What was it that you said at the beginning before you?
I'm sorry?
You said something at the beginning?
Somebody help me.
You said a lot.
When he was mentioning everything that they failed to.
Oh, the design work that he mentioned is Borunda for electrical, Spencer for surveying, Terracon, who's done the subsoil, the geotechnical. But the biggest design on these projects, and anybody will tell you, is the civil engineering. That was not identified because I believe that firm was part of that March 2nd agenda, which was trying to do the design through the buy board, which is prohibited.
Mr. Perkelbeck, is there anything that is prohibited or is keeping us from taking action on this item tonight?
The resolution or action item, it does now comply with the statutory provisions of Texas Government Code, Section 791.
Fantastic, thank you.
Go ahead. I guess the question is to the attorney. So this would cover the design and the construction like it did before, or is it separate?
There's no design being procured, no design engineering services being procured through this contract. The engineering services that are being referenced from a civil standpoint We have validated with both the code official as well as the infrastructure that's in place that we are providing what the city of El Paso requires for this type of project, which they view this as a maintenance project. It does not require a permit for the fields. Also, the design terminology that is being utilized right now is not specific to engineering. It's also specific to the graphics that are on the field. That's a design as well. But everything that we are bringing forward complies with the Texas Government Code as well as the City of El Paso's requirements for construction.
Which would include permits and,
Yes.
okay. So this will be.
For the permits that are required,
Yes.
yes.
Right, okay.
Mr. Rosales?
Can you hear me? My point, Mr. Cardenas, you made a comment in regards to how did Hellas come up with the number, the dollar number, without having to explain that to me, if you would, please, sir.
You can acquire bids for goods and services off a buy board all day long. You're not required to provide any kind of signed or sealed engineering or architecturally designed documents. We provided them a performance scoping document that laid out the performance requirements for this type of project. And frankly, it's a response to that as well as their experience with providing hundreds of these fields.
Yeah, we read some of the information that was provided by superintendent, and I went through all that. I just want to make sure that we don't get ourselves into any form of legal bind, because again, as I mentioned before, we're tracking something that I'm unfamiliar with, and you people have been around for many years, have done this over and over. For you, it's all hat. For me, it's new.
Oh, I understand.
So please.
One of the other direct responses to the question in regards to the bid, I mentioned earlier that there are allowances that are in their proposal to accommodate things like earthwork, which is the soil stabilization I mentioned earlier. Again, those allowances are based off worst-case scenario. Should an inordinate amount of soil remediation have to take place, that would be extraordinary for this region.
I thank you. Thank you, Mr. Cardenas. Thank you, Chairman.
Is there any further discussion? If not, Dr. De La Torre, does the administration have a recommendation on this item?
The administration recommends that the board take action to approve YISD cooperative requisition with Hellas Construction Incorporated for the purchase of athletic enhancements for an amount not to exceed $14.3 million through a purchasing cooperative from bond funds contingent upon final negotiations and legal counsel review, and provided further that no contract shall be executed by the district until the district has received, 1, all architectural and engineering plans required under Chapters 1001 and 1051 of the Occupations Code for performance of the work, and 2, a written certification from the program manager to the district that all required plans and specifications have been prepared and that the required plans and specifications are a part of the contract to be executed.
Using electronic voting, may I please have a motion on action item number 1? Is there a second? Go ahead and cast your votes.
The what? Oh, I need to vote?
Click it with your mouse. There it goes. You got it.
It did?
Motion passes 5-0. Item number 2, consider and take possible action to authorize and direct to execute any and all instruments appropriate or necessary to effectuate the sale of the property Robert F. Kennedy Pre-K Center located at 9009 Alameda Avenue. Is there discussion? Yes, ma'am.
Go ahead. Me? Or is there
Did you want
somebody?
to call the question? We just need to get a 3/5 majority vote to call the question. We can go straight to voting. All those in favor of calling the question? All those opposed?
Aye.
So Go ahead and speak.
Right. Just for the record, before voting, I would like to have that meeting on the appraisal. Is this the right? Ms. Leeper?
Yes, ma'am. If you want to deliberate regarding the value of the property, then I would recommend we go into executive
Yeah,
session.
so that we can have at least everything on file about the appraisal and things maybe we can get together with the board and have some of the questions. Some of our questions that we bring up are unanswered. They never come back to us. So this is one thing I would like to have on record for just for the record, for the constituents in that area.
Thank you. Dr. De La Torre, does administration have a recommendation on action item number 2?
President Haggerty, the district recommends that the board take action to authorize and direct to execute any and all instruments appropriate or necessary to effectuate the sale of the property, Robert F. Kennedy Pre-K Center located at 9009 Alameda Avenue.
I get a motion on action item number 2. Second. Go ahead and cast your votes. Motion passes 4-1. Are there any other discussions or comments? Not, may I have a motion to adjourn? Is there a second? We are adjourned at 7:26 p.m. Thank you.